Hello, good morning. It is great to have you with us. We are live until 10 for your Monday fix of Ireland AM.
Indeed, it is the 5th of September, and whether you're workbound or on the school run, we've got plenty on the way to keep you informed and entertained.
Sure do. Busy old show coming up as the race to find college accommodation continues. We're going to explore the scams. I mean, as if there's not enough going on, targeting unsuspecting students.
Every single year. We're also going to be getting the lowdown on the sellout event that has young people swapping the queues at Coppers for a good story.
Plus, from Grand Prix gripes to dazzling debuts in the Premier League, we're going to round up the weekend's sporting action very shortly.
Alan, good morning to you. What else is coming up?
Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. Later, we're going to meet the Irish prop and model makers who work as featured in some of the biggest blockbusters of the small and the big screen. Amazing. Now, Deric is back. Welcome back, Deric. Where are you this morning?
Thank you very much. We're live from the heart of Dublin City Centre this morning. Spare thought for the poor craters down at Electro-Picnics from County. It bucketed down there last night, but it is a dry and settled start. But guess what? More heavy rain out there today. In fact, we're looking at some thundery downpours with a risk of flooding. So the message to anyone down at AP at the moment is get your bums out of bed and get back to base. Good morning, guys.
Last night.
Thank you very much, Deric. Now let's go up to the Virgin Media News. So here's Cliodhna Russell.
Thanks, Alan. A man in his 20s remains in Garda custody this morning following the deaths of 3 siblings at a house in Rossfield Estate in Tala in Dublin. The victims have been named as 8-year-old twins Chelsea and Christy Cawley and their 18-year-old sister Lisa Cash. Their 14-year-old brother was also injured. Our news correspondent Zara King sent this report from Tala Garda Station.
Well, tributes continue to pour in for 18-year-old Lisa and 8-year-old twins Chelsea and Christy, all 3 siblings who died in the early hours of Sunday morning. A murder investigation is underway. In those floral tributes left by neighbours and friends, among them the words of the children who went to school with Christy and Chelsea. We can take you through some of the notes left by the children. One which read, "Christy, you were a really good friend. We had lots of memories. You were such a nice person." Another which read, "Chelsea, you were really nice. You were good at lots of things." The community centre in Brookfield is open, supporting people within that community, and local councillors say they will need that support over the coming days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a sad day for the area. It's such a sad day for Tala and the broader community here inside Dublin. Every household is going to be touched by this. It's unthinkable. It's unthinkable. Nobody ever thinks that a tragedy like this is going to come to their door. So, given that it is on our doorstep here and we've lost 3 young lives, it is going to be a very, very sad day and a very quiet day, and people are really very touched by it today.
Well, Chelsea and Christy were pupils at St Aidan's National School in Tala. In a statement, the school has said they are deeply saddened by the weekend events. They say their thoughts and prayers are with the children's family and close friends. They say as a school it will be their priority to take care of all of the pupils and the staff at the school, and they say that work will be ongoing over the next couple of days. A post-mortem remains underway on the 3 bodies. Gardaí are not looking for anyone else in connection with this investigation. One man remains in custody.
Speaking in Tala yesterday evening, some local representatives say the community will do its best to support the families of the victims. It's also expected the local schools will today help those affected.
It's condolences to all the family and friends around the area and that, but people will come and support the family, and we're calling for support in the schools maybe tomorrow for any of the school kids that went to school with the children, that they're not going to be there tomorrow, you know.
So, you know, it's a horrible time for Tala in general and Ireland. It's a sad day for Ireland, for everybody. You know, precious lives have been lost.
The parents of Jack de Bromhead have described their son as a one-of-a-kind child who touched their lives in the best possible way. The 13-year-old son of the well-known horse trainer Henry de Bromhead died in an accident at the Glenbeigh Racing Festival on Friday. His funeral will take place on Wednesday in Butlerstown in County Waterford. In Canada, a manhunt is underway for 2 suspects after an attack left 10 people dead and 15 wounded. A photo of the 2 suspects involved in the series of stabbings has been made public by Canadian authorities. The stabbings took place at an Indigenous community and another nearby town. Police say some of the victims appear to have been targeted by the suspects, but others appear to have been attacked at random.
At this point in our investigation, we have located 10 deceased individuals in 13 locations in the community of James Smith Cree Nation and Weldon, Saskatchewan. Several additional victims have been injured, 15 of which at this point have been transported to various hospitals.
Boris Johnson's successor as UK Prime Minister will be revealed later today. The winner will officially take up office tomorrow. Liz Truss is expected to be named as the next Conservative leader following a 6-week campaign.
A ballot of Conservative Party members to elect their new leader ended on Friday after a summer of campaigning, and the results have now been counted. The next Tory leader is expected to be announced at around 12:30 this afternoon. The winner will also be the UK's next Prime Minister. There were only 2 names in the running, the UK's Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, who has remained favourite throughout the race, and former UK Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak. It'll be tomorrow before they are officially sworn in as Prime Minister, replacing Boris Johnson in Downing Street following his resignation in July after a number of political controversies. In a break with tradition, the winner will travel to Balmoral Castle in Scotland and not Buckingham Palace, where Britain's Queen Elizabeth II will appoint them to the new role. It'll be a baptism of fire, with the UK, like many other countries, facing a winter of very high energy prices. Marie Mulcahy, Virgin Media News.
For car insurance, van insurance or home insurance, call the Quote Devil. Unless, of course, you've got money to burn.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. A very good morning to you at home, or if you're indeed streaming online on the player. We're coming to you live here from the heart of Dublin City Centre this morning. Coming up in the next wee while, we're actually heading up the road. We're swinging it left because we are off to visit one of the oldest markets in the country at George's Street Arcade. So that's all to come in the next wee while. Anyway, let's take an opening look at weather together now with Mark Armstrong on cameras this 5th of the month. And I have to say, following that heavy rain, and boy did it bucket down in some spots last night, a much drier and much settled and in fact calm start out there this morning. Now we are seeing a couple of showers just west of Tralee, parts of Castlemaine and Killorglin in County Kerry. Cappoquin and Waterford not escaping either, but elsewhere drier and brighter now as we kickstart your Monday morning. Now, right across this afternoon, we will see more rain move up from the south, and that will track in a northerly direction right across today. In fact, it will lean once again on the slightly heavier side. We're going to see some thundery downpours with a risk of spot flooding out there today. And coupled with all of that, it will be quite windy as well. Fresh to strong, locally gusty southeasterly winds. So the advice, if you're down EP at the moment, get out nice and early because lots of rain on the way once again. Now, across into tonight, again, more showers crisscrossing the island. The heaviest once again through parts of the south. Those winds will veer to the southwest, with overnight lows back to 12 to 15 degrees. So that's your weather for now. We'll catch you again back live at 7:35.
For first-time drivers, young drivers, returning drivers, if you've had an open claim or have had too many penalty points.
It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We'll start with the Irish Times. Its headline: man held over killing of 3 siblings in Tallaght, suspected of prior violence. Following the tragic deaths of 8-year-old twins Chelsea and Christy Cawley and their 18-year-old sister Lisa Cash, it's believed that the suspect knew the victims all of their lives.
Farewell, little angels. Our hearts are broken. That's the front page of the Irish Independent as people continue paying their respects following those tragic deaths.
Killed at home is the top story on the Daily Mail, again referring to the tragic killings of 3 siblings in Tallaght.
Going with that same story, also the Mirror's headline: 3 angels butchered in their own home.
The Sun leads with the same story, the headline: nightmare.
And finally, the Herald goes with knifed and thrown from window.
The Examiner goes with something a little bit different. It's €5.2 million for cases linked to Hyde rulings. This refers to the former deputy chair of An Bord Pleanála, Paul Hyde, who voted on planning applications which have since cost €5.2 million linked to 64 court cases which were either lost or conceded.
Pretty horrendous stories
Absolutely.
on the front page of the papers this morning. You're very welcome back. Now, joining us to discuss what's making the news in this morning's papers, broadcaster and the host of the How to Pivot podcast, Hayden Finnegan. Good morning to you, Hayden. Listen, it's pretty bleak stories at the front of all the papers this morning about the 3 deaths in Dublin. I suppose tell us what we know at the moment.
Yeah, the blanket coverage this morning on the front pages of the papers, obviously just those beautiful children's smiling faces, you know, twins Christy and Chelsea Cawley, who were 8, and their sister, 18-year-old Lisa Cash, who were stabbed in a house in the Rossfield estate in Brookfield in Tala. Their 14-year-old sibling managed to flee the house and did injure himself in the process, but it was him that raised the alarm, according to the reports this morning. And a man in his 20s remains in Garda custody. Now, the thing about it is that the Garda statement says that the incident was violent, traumatic and challenging. And it's just, you wouldn't necessarily know this unless you were working on news desks, but when Gardaí send in a statement, it's dry, there are the bare facts, there's absolutely nothing in it. So for them to kind of mention those 3 words is quite pretty monumental in itself. It has obviously deeply affected those who attended the scene. So it began just after about midnight on Saturday night into Sunday morning. And lots of people, it seems to have unfolded over an hour. And so there were a lot of locals out and have witnessed an awful lot. There actually has been appeals for people not to share any footage that they might have filmed on their phones and to pass it over to the Gardaí instead.
The suspect, we know, was known to the family all their lives, is what has been said in the papers today, and had been at a party in Clondalkin. An argument started and there was a taxi taken to the Rossfield estate.
Yes, yeah. So more will emerge, I suppose. But of course, if he may have to be, let me see, if he opted to continue questioning overnight, then there will have to be a decision made today whether to release or charge him. But if he took the break overnight, it might be extended. And it's reported that there was a break taken to have him medically and psychologically assessed as well.
And the guards had to obviously storm the house as well.
Yeah. They responded to, there was a resisting of arrest. It wasn't a very straightforward process, as the reports say this morning, and that they had to discharge a taser to subdue him.
Because he'd gone up into the attic, the unconverted attic.
Yeah, an unconverted attic. So we'll
find out more throughout the day.
Desperate story.
Obviously, you know, there's no words.
No words.
There's no cliche. So I know that just the people at Tala and
Thoughts
everyone
go out
is just
to the mum and family and friends and whatever else. It's just that's it. Like, farewell, little angels. Our hearts are broken. Horrendous. Listen, let's move on to across the water. So it looks like Liz Truss, you would expect, looks like she's going to be handed the reins.
It seems to be a coronation, you know, rather than election at this stage. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will find out today. After midday, they'll find out who is going to be the leader of the Conservative Party and the new Prime Minister. And it is widely expected to be Liz Truss. She has adopted this. The EU are villains, so these are the bad guys.
It seems to work over there,
and it seems to work very well. And, you know, the thing is that as long as they're blaming the EU and, you know, they can't be accountable then. You know, this is kind of a pretty obvious ploy that as long as the attention is on the EU, they're the bad guys. Don't look at us. Look over here.
It does seem, though, during the summer, because this was happening and there was this vacuum where Boris wasn't coming out spouting his normal stuff because there was the leadership battle taking place, that even the right-wing papers had to be like, well, no one can get out of the country because of this. Oh, no one's got any power. No one's got any money. Like, the situation in the UK, in comparison to it's worse in the UK when it comes to the cost of living and the disparity between the very wealthy and the very poor. So they didn't have the EU distraction this summer. And it seems that more and more people are starting to go, hold on now, Brexit has done this to us. Will her tactic, because she's the one who's the Northern Ireland Protocol, she's the one who brought the legislation through. She definitely is leaning to the right of the party. That's her supporters. Will it work for her again going into winter when they are looking at power blackouts?
Who would want that role? Really? I mean, who wants that job at the minute? Because they are staring into a pretty dark winter. Like everyone, but I think over in the UK, particularly with Brexit and everything else on top of that.
No, it is. It's pretty dark. I mean, the thing is, she will have to weigh up whether she wants to take on a potential trade war with the European Union on top of her cost of living crisis and the energy crisis. So we'll have to wait and see just how far she's willing to push them. She has, as you said, she introduced legislation to bypass certain elements of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is kind of a technicality in terms of like extending grace periods without, that was a unilateral decision. So the EU have been considering whether they take legal action on that basis. Then separately, there is a clause in the agreement that says you can press an emergency brake if there is such that, you know, where is it?
Environmental, social, and economic issues.
Yeah, when there are something catastrophic like that. So that could, you know, result in separate action. So you'd have two things working in tandem there. So really, I guess she will have to weigh up whether she wants to risk a trade war and worsen the economic circumstances on top of what she has already, which is why I think from the Irish point of view, the Irish government would have preferred to see Rishi. I mean, we're talking as if it's a done deal. We still don't know, but they would have preferred to see Rishi Sunak.
From a Dublin point of view, what is the worry here? Because we're heading into a pretty dark winter as well. A lot of our gas comes from the UK.
Yeah.
So is this something
they're our biggest trading partner?
Yeah. I mean, is this a big... They're going to have a big stranglehold over
I think you'd have to consider that because of how reliant we are. And in the past, when I say in the past, I mean in the recent past, you could say, well, look, that'll be worked out.
Yeah.
They won't be turning off the gas taps. But now there's this sort of element of going, well, they may just say, we just have to look after ourselves, guys. And so where does that leave our energy security? So that has to be playing on their minds at the moment.
We also have to remember that they need Europe to get an awful lot of their power as well. Yes, 70% of ours comes, or a huge amount of theirs comes through Europe as well. So this is all, we could be used as a pawn in the war against Europe, but at the same time, it's mutually assured destruction.
Yeah,
sometimes if they do that, if they have the short-sightedness, which sometimes, unfortunately, under this new right-wing regime in the Conservative Party, it does feel like they have.
Well, indeed, and we'll see who she announces for the cabinet and just how much further to the right it might swing, and we'll find that out probably tomorrow.
OK, well, we'll be discussing that tomorrow, guaranteed. OK, final one here. This is featuring in all the papers this morning. So the average age of Irish people moving out of their childhood home is 27.9, but I think it's guys... Men are actually 28 or 29.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Well, look, there's obviously a very serious issue underlying the reason for this, in that it's, you know, prohibitively expensive and there are no places to go. I think always, even I managed to leave home as an 18-year-old because I just luckily grew up in a time when there was a functioning housing market. But even then, Dubs always stayed at home. No, I know. We're talking 20 years, actually. I'm one of those people now, 20 years ago. But yeah, no, even then, like, Dubs would always stay at home much longer than the rest of us country bumpkins who'd move up to go to college. So I don't know whether, I don't know how you account for the male. Is there a bit of an Irish mammy thing creeping in here going, oh, I can't leave, but I also have it very nice.
Italians. So this is something mammissimos, is it?
It's a cultural phenomenon in Italy where the boys do not leave their mammy's house until they're ready to get married, and they were bringing a divorce clause for women to be able to get divorced from their husbands because of mamissimo.
Because you don't cook the
they expect their wives to be. They expect their wives to be their mother. No, it's a massive thing in Italy. It's fascinating in Italy how they just don't leave their mammies. But there is an Irish mammy.
There's an Irish mammy thing too.
I go home at the weekend and I mean, I don't stop. Like, she'd sit there going, are you fitting into your jeans all right? But she won't stop feeding me from the moment I get home until the second I leave.
When you went to Dublin, did you get given the food for the freezer and stuff?
When I went to college in Galway, there'd be bags of stuff coming
for the fellas, because I can attest to that. I've witnessed that in not my direct family, but you know that the extended family where the young fella going to college would get the meals frozen up. And
I got a box of washing powder and an iron.
That's what you got.
Off you go now.
My brother, we were both in Galway at the same time. He got like chocolate and meat and whatever, and I got fruit.
Let us know, is this something that's happened in your house? Did your brother get special treatment and you didn't?
And when you go home, like, what's it like? Do you still get that? Are you coming home? Are you staying out all night? What's going on?
Do you bring all your washing home? Like, do you still bring your washing home at the weekend? We'd love to know. 0896 111 111. Please do let us know. Aidan Finnegan from the How to Pivot podcast. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Aidan.
Alan, what about you?
I left home when I was 18 and went to live in New York.
Oh! It was no getting the washing done from home.
No getting the washing done there. They weren't sending anything to New York.
Yeah. He also wasn't doing the washing in New York either. He was sending it out, you can guarantee.
Now, after the break, with the college term about to begin, we discuss the rise in student accommodation scams. Stay with us for this. Thanks for staying with us. Now, listen to this. Gardaí have reported a 30% increase in accommodation fraud in 2022 compared to pre-pandemic levels, and are warning students out there this morning to be wary of rental scams as they return to college.
And we were just talking about people staying at home until they're 29. Of course they are. It's mad. Here to discuss the red flags to look out for is Detective Superintendent Michael Cryan. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. 30% of an increase in scams in comparison to pre-pandemic levels. Why is this happening?
I suppose, first of all, there's a dread of accommodation out there, and over COVID, the scammers became more prolific as well. Our lives moved online, so all sorts of scams became far more prolific over COVID period. Accommodation fraud actually dropped, obviously, because students were living at home and there was no travel and things like that. So we decided to compare the figures. We usually compare them against the previous year, but we decided to go back to 2019. So that's probably why it has risen so much.
And what kind of scams are we talking about? Now, what are they doing?
There's generally two types. One is where you pay rent in advance or you pay a deposit in advance. And either A, the accommodation doesn't exist at all, or the person who offered it for rent doesn't have the authority to offer it for rent. I suppose you also have one then where they take deposits from a number of different people for the same apartment.
And are scammers living, like, is it being done from anywhere in the world, or are the scammers in Ireland?
There's probably two types. Originally, it was the individual scammer himself just operating. He had a room, he tried to sublet it, he'd take deposits from different people, whereas now there's a more organised crime element in it. So you'd have apartment, you'd have very slick clone websites, ads, pop-up ads, social media feeds, money mules involved in the laundering process. So you'd have all of that as well.
So you're saying that a student is looking at a website and a site comes up with rooms to let, and it looks very legit, and it has all the details that you'd follow. But are they handing over the money before, so you're not going to see this room or this apartment or this accommodation. You're not going to see it. You're being asked to hand over the money before any of that.
Yes, unfortunately, quite a few of the students are international students that arrive into Dublin as well, so they're booking their accommodation before they travel even as well. But the way it's offered, the way it's sold as this is the one chance you get. You need to take it now. There's a sense of urgency to it. If you don't take it, you won't get it. Accommodation is scarce in Dublin, so you need to take, not just Dublin, it's all over Ireland.
So get this today or it's gone
type of thing. There's a sense of urgency to it, yeah. All of these, and it's offered, again, the other thing, it's offered very good rates as well. So it's offered as a good deal. It's a good deal if you take it now. It'll go back up to its original price tomorrow. So all of this, it's a sales technique they're using, the fraudsters are using.
This year, because the CAO results are coming out so late, there is, because some students might be sure of where they're going, but because of, grade inflation, no one quite knows. So obviously there are parents who are going to be scared and they mightn't have gotten their accommodation already. So what can we look out for right now? Just be like, red flag, do not do this because this is a scam.
I suppose, first of all, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If it's coming across as too cheap, way below what the market value is in that area, it's a warning flag. Again, if there's a sense of urgency to it, you have to take it now. If you don't take it now, you're going to lose it. The payment methods, if they're looking for cash, if they're looking for cryptocurrency, if they're looking for a bank transfer and it's going to a bank account outside of Ireland, all of these are red flags. But also if the person wants the money off you before there's any lease signed, before they see you as well, they're not doing their due diligence on the tenant either. Most landlords will do their due diligence as well.
So you have to meet your landlord,
That's what I'm thinking.
And landlord wants to meet the tenants as well, for that matter. You need to, if at all possible, you need to view the property. You need to make sure it exists. You need to make sure that if it exists, it's for rent as well. And that can be difficult if you're living in the western and northwest of Ireland, and certainly you have to do it. But you may know somebody who lives in Dublin, Galway, Cork, wherever, that can go and look for it. Student unions are worth, colleges and things like that are worth contacting as well,
Because there's one thing that you can do this, because I remember this from college, and you would get a key, but the key wouldn't fit in the door. Like, that's another thing, you have to make sure that the key fits.
You get a load of students going to see a bed sit somewhere or a one-bedroom apartment somewhere, and they think they've hired, but then that person has got a deposit from 20 other people, and you go along and you're sorry, that's not yours. Now, 290,000 has already been scammed from students this year. So on average, how much is a student losing?
I think it's working out around 1,300 is the mean, something like that. Now, not all of them are students. Some of them are people going on holidays as well, should we say, the weekend breaks as well. You can get caught that way as well. But this is primarily focused on students because of the time of year.
Yeah. If you have right now, like say you have fallen victim, what do you do straight away?
Well, you need to report it to the Gardaí and you need to go to your bank immediately and get your bank to try and do a recall of the money.
Say you're sitting there, because that can happen, you know, in the moment, and next thing you transfer the funds and you're like, oh my God, what have I done? If you ring your bank quickly enough, you can put a stay on it, right?
You can get the money recalled, you can get the bank to stop it, but you need to be very quick about it. Especially because money moves very quick nowadays. It's electronically, it's moved from account to account. And the criminal organisations involved in this use money mules as well to move the money on. So you need to get onto your bank as soon as possible and ask them to do a recall.
What does a money mule mean?
A money mule is a person who allows their bank account to be used by criminals.
Oh.
To launder the money through their account.
And there's actually very unsuspecting people that might be doing this. Some younger people have been caught up on this, I think.
There are thousands of younger people caught up as money mules in Ireland connected with criminal organisation, not just with accommodation fraud, with all frauds. All frauds involving bank transfers require a money mule, shall we say, to launder the money for them, or otherwise the criminal has to use his own bank account.
So they get a cut, obviously.
I think most of them get nothing in the end. Unfortunately, what most of them get is get arrested.
Yeah.
That's what they get.
It's the money mule who's always going to be caught.
But the money mule is always going to be the first person because it's their bank account.
Yeah.
It's their
the trail is there.
That's where it starts,
Michael, with this level of fraud, like I'm talking about all the frauds we've had now, romantic fraud, we've got every sort of scam. Like, are we at levels that we're going to catch these people ever? They're just getting smarter and smarter and smarter.
Well, all of this leaves a trace. All of these frauds online, shall we say, leave a trace, because all the money, the electronic money, there's a trace always. The CCTV of withdrawals being made, this trace of phone records, of contacts, of WhatsApp messages. So there's always a trace. There are hundreds, thousands of people being arrested in relation to these frauds every year in Ireland and being prosecuted before the courts.
Michael, just a word of advice then to anybody is never transfer money unless you've met the person or have seen the property.
In relation to this, the main advice would be to try and see the property, have somebody you know, somebody you know and trust see the property, make sure it exists. And not only that it exists, that it's for rent and that nobody else has also booked it.
Yeah.
So you need to be sure you're speaking to a proper landlord. Most properties, well, all properties should be registered with the Tenancy Board.
Absolutely.
They absolutely should be.
Yeah.
And there's great advice to be got from their website as well in relation to it. Student unions, colleges, all of these are great advice to be got there as well.
And we know it's a scary time for parents and everything, but we do hope over the next time, if you're worried about it, please do get in contact with someone. Detective Superintendent Michael Cryan, thank you so much for joining us today. Cheers. Tommy, over to you.
Thanks very much, guys. Plenty still to come, including a storyteller, a movie model maker and a Dublin do-gooder. What's not to love? See you after this short break. Good morning. Welcome back to the show. Over the next 2 hours, we've got school snacks, stylish skirts, and a savvy storyteller.
Skirts!
I don't want to miss it.
It's going to be so good. In just a moment, we're going to be meeting the person taking the art of storytelling to a new generation with his sellout events.
Later, a male breast cancer survivor, which I never knew anything about, 1 in 1,000. He's going to open up on why all men should be checking for lumps and bumps.
And from spaceships to severed heads, we get the inside scoop on the Limerick prop manufacturers loved by Hollywood.
I was looking at that on Instagram last night. Amazing.
Isn't it? Fabulous.
Alan, now what else is coming up?
Oh, well, Edward Hayden is back in the kitchen this morning with a healthy school snack. Good morning to you, Edward.
Good morning, Alan.
Granola bars.
Yeah, I'm doing lovely, fruity, kind of chewy granola bars, and they're really, really nice, and they're packed full of lovely dried fruits and oats as well. So the nice little perfect lunchbox.
I was going to say nice and healthy, and then I've seen all the butter you have there. And the sugar.
Divided, I suppose, by the amount of people I'm serving. But they are delicious, I can tell you that much.
Now, they are going to be gorgeous. Plus, Deric is exploring an iconic Dublin landmark. Deric, where are you this morning?
Yes, Al, we're in the heart of Dublin city centre. I have to say, I am enjoying the glorious sunshine. I hope you are at home as well. Oh my goodness, I just walked into a flower pot. You couldn't didn't make it up. I'm here outside Georgia Street Arcade. We're going to be catching up with some of the traders, including Simon here in Simon's Cafe, and also one Ukrainian lady who has set up a beauty shop home away from home. Catch us later on. I can't believe I just walked into her flower pot.
See you, Deric. Now, look forward to meeting and catching up with Deric a little later on.
Now, we're getting lots of messages in this morning, a lot in relation to scamming. We were just talking about
we were
accommodation
talking about
scams.
that earlier on. Now, we mentioned the figure. Nearly €290,000 has been scammed from people for accommodation that didn't exist this year.
So that's like a year's rent.
Is it just incredible?
Yeah, no, that's
but
right.
it's incredible,
It's
isn't it? Imagine €290,000 being scammed from people who were just looking for accommodation around the country. And so Emer says here, my son was nearly a victim to this type of fraud. He was looking for accommodation in Galway, spotted an apartment. It looked like everything was kosher because it looked like it was on the daft.ie website. And the Emer says that luckily he sent it to the parents. The parents checked it out. It wasn't on Daft. And then they checked it and went, the landlord was saying, give us the money up front. And it was only through text.
And he wasn't available to show them around the
accommodation. So always check the official website if you are looking on these sites.
Because he'd sent through a link. And it was a copied daft.ie page.
Yeah.
It wasn't really daft.ie. Mary says, my daughter received her Leaving Cert results on Friday. It looks like she secured enough points for her first choice in UCC. We live in Wexford, so she'll need accommodation near campus. We've been looking since June. Extortionate rents, awful conditions, nothing that would help their mental health. Luckily, my sister lives in Cork, so she's got a spare room. So hopefully she'll be sorted out. But something needs to be done for everybody else.
The houses that you live as a student are always going to be rubbish, aren't they?
God, I lived in
I lived in.
Awful places.
Holes in the walls. But that's what you want.
But you had a great time.
Student,
exactly.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about. But you don't want to be paying an absolute fortune for that.
No, that's the thing.
We're also just talking quickly about the average age of now young people having to stay at home living with their parents is till the late 20s, 27, 28 years of age. And Hugh said, my two sons have both moved out at the age of 18. They went to college. And 8 and 6 years ago, given the accommodation crisis now, they're both back living with their parents at 26 and 24. Adjusting to life with living with the parents again is pretty tough.
Yeah. Can I just say for Jane, like for people as well, because I know, like I moved home at one stage when I got home from travelling, and my parents had to adjust to life living with me. They were happy with us all being good. Thanks very much. Cheers. But Jane,
send her back. Send her, please. Just take her, anyone.
Jane's here.
I'll pay for the apartment.
Mary, I feel your pain.
Thank you. Jane's here and she goes, God forgive me, I love my children, but my son is approaching 30. He's at home. I just want to watch my stories in peace without having to make him dinner every night. Jane, I'm sure there's other parents who feel your pain as well. It's not just about the kids.
Croatian men stay at home till they're 35 on average.
That's on average. So Croatia...
They're the highest in Europe. Italian men are 31.
Let us know. Do you dread having the kids back living at home with you, or just send them out?
0896 111 111. Now, after the break, whether it's tales of grief or an ode to being a Southside Hun, we're going to discuss this storytelling event taking Dublin by storm.
You're a Limerick Hun.
Limerick Hun.
You're a Limerick Hun.
Woo, love.
No, she got kicked out of the house.
I'll talk to you in a minute.
Well, once upon a time, I'll tell you a story.
Tell me more. No, go on.
I can't do it. I'm rubbish. Is the art of storytelling dead? I can't do it. Well, not according to this man. Limerick lad has brought it back to the mainstream.
Seanchoíche is an event which sees storytellers sharing their work, and founder Ciaran Gaffney joins us now. Good morning, Ciaran. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. Yeah,
it's lovely to have you here. With Tommy, with his Once Upon a Time, are you going, you need a bit of practice there?
We'll give you a second round.
Tell us about Seanchoíche.
Seanchoíche, yeah.
What is it?
So it's basically a storytelling night in Dublin that I founded last October in 2021. And it's a night basically where people from all corners of the city and beyond can come together and engage with entertaining, simple, evocative stories. And these stories are told by anyone. You know, they're like extraordinary stories told by ordinary people, essentially. And they can be personal anecdotes, they can be fictional narratives, they can be pieces of poetry that they've prepared. Or sometimes you'll have someone come in and like take an excerpt from a book out, and then they'll kind of talk about the context of that and kind of why that affects them personally. The vast majority of people that get up on the stage, they've never spoken before, they've never done public speaking, and generally it's an anecdote that they tell. And I decided to do this event because I felt like Dublin is a city full of storytellers. I think every single person, you know, from Ireland or that's experienced Ireland is a naturally born storyteller. And I decided to do it immediately, initially just with my close friends. And the first event, was a real success. And then the second event, once we created an Instagram, sold out in less than a minute. And each time we've done it, it's just been selling out faster and faster and faster. And the name Seanchoíche, it derives from the Seanchoíche. So Seanchoíche was an ancient Irish storyteller who would go from village to village, house to house in the 1800s, 1900s and tell stories to people who largely were illiterate. It was the only form of non-musical entertainment they could engage with. And then, since then, it's kind of just become, I think, quite endemic in our overall culture, just to be storytellers.
Well, it's from the Homer and the Odyssey all the way down. It was all oral storytelling. So it's what cultures have to tell their stories.
Exactly. And it brings people together and, it really is just a symbol of empathy when you listen to someone tell their story and then when you kind of can relate to them with your own story. And the name, Ihe, then obviously it's the Irish for night. And then the plural for Seanchoíche is Seanchoíche. So then if you merge Seanchoíche and Ihe, you get storytelling night as a portmanteau, but you also get storytellers. So it's a kind of double entendre and a pun, essentially.
It's something that I think Ireland and Irish people have been renowned for, storytelling. But is it something that we're losing, do you think? More people are on their phones, less people are standing up and telling stories, less people are probably listening.
So I think maybe that was what my conception of storytelling was until I decided to throw my hat in the ring and try out the event and see if it worked. And when I saw that there's such a massive desire for people to attend an event like this and either listen to stories or tell their stories, I realised that we haven't lost it at all. I just think that we haven't had many vessels to do this and to kind of give this a go. And there is a really, really natural draw towards storytelling. And I think we haven't lost it because even if you think about an average weekend in a pub or in a social space, there are at least 50 people telling stories around you. And that's how we are as people. I think people just engage with a story and that's how we connect with others.
Are these funny stories?
So it ranges. It varies. You could have someone tell a very funny story, very lighthearted, and the next person that gets up there will tell you a heart-shattering story. And that's the whole point. It's not a stand-up night.
Oh, geez, right? So it could be a heart shatter,
Yeah,
wow.
I've had people come in and tell something they've never told anyone before. I've also had someone tell a really funny anecdote about what happened on Saturday night. And it's a lovely range of, laughter, crying, kind of people who walk out of the room feeling a little bit shocked sometimes as well. And that's the beauty of it. It's a total emotional roller coaster. You have 8 people speak throughout the event. It's a 3-hour event and there are 50 people in the room. And you're just taking on a total journey.
Do you vet them?
Not really, actually.
Good.
So, people will come to me and they'll ask me if they can speak. And I prefer not to know what their story is going to be about. So what I do is I create a WhatsApp group with the speakers and I ask each and every one of them to send me a couple of emojis to sum up their story. And then that way I cadence it. So I'll have a happy, sad, happy, cadence of storytellers.
This is so modern. You know what I mean?
So millennial.
The Gael Gores from back in the 18th century. You're telling me an emoji here.
WhatsApp groups as well.
So is that it's
aubergine?
We've had one aubergine story.
Saturday night, an aubergine.
Have you an example? Give us an example of some.
Yeah, even this one really, really beautiful story was a story that was given by a Turkish guy who lives in Dublin. And his story was all about, he had previously been living somewhere else in Europe and his visa was running out. And it was basically the last day, it was the last week, I think, when he was being threatened with being deported back to Turkey. And he's a member of the LGBT plus community. He would have to go into the army because they have conscription over there. And he was absolutely terrified that he'd be brought into the army where there's a lot of discrimination against people who are queer, but also people who are Kurdish. He's also Kurdish. And the day he was meant to be getting deported, he got accepted into Ireland. And he told this beautiful story about being able to move to Ireland and feel so welcomed by the Irish people. And what he said to me after the story was it just felt so cathartic to be able to tell a crowd of people how it felt to be accepted into their culture, and it's something he'd never done before. And that was really beautiful. And it was told in a really funny way, but it was also extremely emotional. I also was able to one time kind of talk about my grandmother, and basically when my grandmother passed away, I was 15 years old, so I wasn't old enough or mature enough or be able to process her death or even give a eulogy. So I took this opportunity to almost say her eulogy to 50 people that I had, in a room.
Yeah.
And that felt really good. It felt really restorative. And then some people would tell hilarious kind of incidents that have happened to them in college. Or there's this one girl who writes these hilarious monologues and she reads them from her iPod very satirically, and she kind of just monologues all the different thoughts that go through her head as a 26-year-old girl living in South Dublin. And Yeah, it's just a lovely range of
So from a eulogy to then...
It can be everything.
Anything and everything. And that's why I'm, like, open to anyone writing to me and asking, like, hey, can I speak at your next event? Because really I want as much diversity as possible in the range of speakers.
The fact that these are... So it's in 15-minute slots. Does someone have to talk for 15 minutes?
No, it's basically you can talk for, you know, a minimum of 30 seconds and ideally up to a maximum of 15 minutes. But then again, for each person, it's very personal how long they want to speak for. And sometimes the story might go on for longer, sometimes it might go on for less. But generally, the sweet spot is like 10 to 15 minutes.
If someone's rattling on, can you kind of go, next?
So I haven't had the experience yet.
I'd say there can be someone, like, is there drink involved as well?
Yeah,
like you have a few drinks?
There is a little bit of drink. So we haven't had any, like, adversities yet. But sometimes, like, you know, people will speak a little bit longer, and that's fine as long as they're able to carry the story through. And sometimes I think the sign of a good story is you don't really notice how long it's gone on for. But generally, we haven't had anyone go on for half an hour thus far.
There's obviously a desire for it because they've sold out. You live in Amsterdam and you come home for this to Dublin, Limerick fella. You'll have to bring it to Limerick at some stage, obviously.
I'd love to bring it to Limerick.
There'll be a lot of people in Dolan's. Woo, love, let's go. So there's obviously a desire for this. Like, people just want to... Is it the human connection?
I think it is. I think it's like this, like the kind of the atmosphere in the room. It's so warm and it's so empathetic, I think, and people just really love that. People really gravitate towards that, and you know, it is also innately Irish. Like, it's not, you know, specifically Irish, but it is quite close to what Irish culture is all about, and I think people gravitate quite.
We want to give someone a go. It's like,
exactly, and we're going to be doing it. So we're definitely obviously continuing it in Dublin, but I'll also be taking it to Amsterdam and also London over the next couple of months as well.
Fair play.
And there's huge desire for that too.
I'm just saying, you're from Limerick, and
Limerick,
I just think you have to bring it home at some stage.
Ciaran Gaffney, of course, Seanchoíche. You can find it Seanchoíche on Instagram as well. If people want to get to go along and share what.
And do you have more? You sold out. The next event is sold out. Do you have another one?
The next event is sold out. The one this week is sold out, but there'll be another one in December, and they're basically every 2 months, every 2 months.
Halloween.
Fair play.
Halloween would be great, actually.
Halloween, you got to do one around Halloween.
We started it around Halloween last year, and also each night has a theme as well. So that's another thing. Yeah. So that's the story.
You're going to do any rugby stories, are you? We'll get them up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Ciaran, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a million, Ciaran. Lovely to chat to you.
Now, after the break, I'm going to be joining Alan in the kitchen. Alan, is he here? Is he on the menu?
Here.
Oh, good man. I couldn't see you.
Now, this man would be great for a story.
I swear to God, he'd be amazing.
You'd never get him off. You'd be getting those hooks. Go on, get off.
15 minutes, did you say?
15 minutes.
I don't know if it's starting.
Yeah, I tell you, granola bars.
15 minutes.
Like you've never tasted. That's coming up after the break.
Inspired by nature, powered by light. Becco Harvest Fresh sponsors cookery on Ireland AM.
Now, Edward Hayden has the perfect healthy snack for the little ones going back to school. What have you got for us, Edward?
Now, what I'm doing is I'm doing some gorgeous, lovely, fruity, chewy granola bars, and these will be absolutely gorgeous. Really nice lunchbox treat, or, you know, maybe for the little cake sales or something for work or something. They're just really nice, really indulgent. And they're a nice kind of an empty or press sort of recipe as well.
It's a great idea because all we get in our house, I spoke to this last week, Al, is with my daughter trying to send her off with a packed lunch.
Yeah,
and all she wants is snacks from these packets that you buy, like, in supermarkets where this is Lisa's.
You're making it yourself.
Thomas, you'll be baking now for the evening. This will sort you out for the week.
Well, I'll tell you now, let's taste.
You go to the taste test. Now, so what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm just going to start there with some butter and 3 spoons of golden syrup. I'm just going to melt those together. I'm going to leave those on to melt, and we'll come back to those in just a second. I've 6 ounces, 175 grams.
Now, but that's making...
Look at all that I've made.
Look at all
the crusts and all that are after being eaten already here this morning.
Wow, okay.
Now, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to melt those together, and that's going to kind of form that nice kind of chewy centre. Now, what I've got then is what I'm going to tell people at home is the perfect size tin. So definitely try and find this size tin. So you could use a 9-inch squares. They're tarting up my granola squares there. They're tarting them up.
Adding a bit of flavour.
Do you want a belt of an 11 by 7? I was going to tell you, buy an 11 by 7. I'll give you a belt of one.
Yeah.
Now, a 9-inch square, or this is an 11 by 7. It's a nice tray bake. So it works really, really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to take a piece of parchment paper and I'm going to put that right across there. Now, if you can see, what I'm doing is just forming it without adjusting or compromising the edges. And I'm going to fill those edges in just a second. But meanwhile, I'm just going to put in my sugar. So I've got some sugar here. So I've got my brown sugar. I'm just going to pop that in.
That butter not
Sounds like it's going to explode.
No, it's not. And you want to keep it, that's why I'm keeping an eye on it. You want to keep it so that it's all there, because you're looking for it to kind of almost start forming like a caramel. Do you know that sort of way?
Really?
Because
Okay.
that's going to give you that chewy centre that we're looking for. Now, so the sugar is going in there. Let that dissolve. I'm just going to reduce the heat a little minute, and I'm going to leave that sizzle and bubble there for a few minutes, keeping an occasional stir on it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my tin, and you can see I've just lined that tin, reminding people it's 11 by 7, gorgeous for brownies, lemon drizzle cakes, whatever. I just have 2 little strips of parchment paper, and I'm just going to pop those at the bare edge as well. So you need this tin to be fully lined, because it is going to be nice and sticky and nice and
So
chewy.
the butter, like the butter on the outside, won't be enough. You need the parchment paper.
Absolutely, the parchment paper to get this out, because it'll be nice and chewy. Now, over to your bowl then, and it's very, very simple. And as I said to you earlier on, this is a real empty the press sort of recipe. So the kind of the core, if you like, ingredient is the 4 ounces, 110 grams of porridge oats. So pop those in there. And then after that, you can add whatever bits and pieces that you'd like. Now, I've given people at home a recipe, but they can adjust it as suits themselves. I've got some sultanas, which I'm going to put in there. I've got some mixed seeds, and I've said some pumpkin seeds or sunflower seeds. I've just got the bag of mixed seeds, and I've put in a couple of ounces of that. That works really nicely in there as well. I've got some lovely dried fruits. So what I've got is I've got some apricots, which I've chopped up into small pieces, some lovely dried apricots. Now, apricots are a bit expensive at the minute. The dried apricots are very expensive.
All right.
See, very, yeah. Why? I bought 200 grams the other day over the weekend. I think it was like $5.50 or $5.60.
Oh, wow, okay.
So you could kind of substitute something else for that. I felt you were worth that financial indulgence.
And the taste is worth it.
There you have it. But you could adjust it with other fruits, maybe sultanas in there instead. Now, I've got some mixed peel in there, and also I've got some prunes. So I've got some lovely prunes, which I've diced up there as well. And then finally, you can add in some nuts. So I've said to you to add in walnuts, or you could add in cashews if you want it. Do you know what would be lovely in here as well? It's just some pistachio nuts. Would work absolutely fabulous. Or even maybe some chopped almonds or hazelnuts would work really, really well in there as well. So you can see I've just roughly crunched those up with my hands. I don't want to have these.
Yeah, because it's not like sticking in your teeth.
No.
Bars are.
And I want there to be a big sense of textural interest about this. Then what I've got is a small little bit of mixed spice, checking the date on the top to make sure it's not left over from 3 Christmas cakes ago. And then I'm going to give that a nice, good, big stir. OK, so it just looks lovely already, you can see. Now, think about putting in some banana chips. Think about putting in some dried cranberries in there as well, and that would be all fabulous. Now, what I've got here then is I've got the sugar, the butter and the golden syrup, which has mixed together. And if you can just see there, it has formed like a little kind of a caramel.
Yeah,
OK, so there's a nice little bubble on that. And I'm going to pour all of that in there to my mixture, OK? So pour that lovely toffee-style mixture in. And then going to give it a nice little mix around. OK, I have my oven preheated. You'll want that about 190, 375 or gas mark 5.
Make sure. Very posh bowl.
Would you believe this is Washford crystal?
Truly,
when I was going on the when I was going with the apricots, I said I better bring the crystal as well. This is the esteem I hold you in up here. Why I don't know, but anyway, I feel you're worth it. Now, pour all of that in there, just like so. OK. Every little bit in, and then flatten that out. Use a spoon or use a potato masher or something to flatten that out, OK? So you do need to compress it down really, really well, which I'm going to do and continue to do. So press it down really tightly. Go in for then? Pop it into the oven for about 15 minutes. It'll all bubble up.
15? About
15, yeah. Because everything doesn't need to be cooked, just needs to be set. Bubble it all up. It'll all come out bubbling up. Leave it set in the tin for a little while. Then invert it out of the tin, as I've done. I've crushed into lovely bars.
Can I have another one there, Al?
Of course you can. I've crushed into lovely bars, and what I've done is I drizzled them lightly with white chocolate, and then Alan drizzled them heavily with white chocolate.
The white chocolate is gorgeous on it.
I've left the white chocolate there.
Put that in the lunchbox.
And it's gorgeous as well. But again, people, you might decide to half dip them and that could be very nice if you were bringing them to work or something. You might just
like
get some
chocolate.
melt some chocolate and just take some and just dip it down halfway, put it out onto a piece of parchment paper and let it set. And it just poshes them up a little bit.
If you're doing that, you dip it into the chocolate and then into the fridge, is it?
I wouldn't maybe put it into the fridge. I just pop it out and let it set. It will set naturally in a few minutes. You know,
they're delicious.
You're
they
very
are
welcome.
delicious.
Now
Seriously.
back to school you go.
Back to school it is.
So what the posh word for crystal and everything, right? Today now.
Right now, it's over 140 years old, but will it be able to withstand Deric Hartigan? Thank you, Edward. After the break, Deric explores George's Street Arcade.
Inspired by nature, powered by light. Becco Harvest Fresh sponsors cookery on Ireland AM.
Welcome back to Monday Morning's Ireland AM.
Now it is time to check back in with Deric, who appears to be getting ready for a bit of retail therapy. Deric, how are you getting on?
Absolutely, Tommy. Fascinating to be standing here in the heart of Dublin city centre in one of the oldest marketplaces, not only in Ireland, but also in Europe. Gwen is the lady behind it for now. Gwen, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Deric.
Gwen,
nice to see you.
This place absolutely steeped in history, isn't it?
Steeped in history. So this is a Victorian shopping centre, and it is exactly as it was on opening day in 1881. So it's probably one of the only buildings that is exactly as it was on opening day. And it was commissioned, the Queen decided to gift Ireland with a shopping centre.
Now, this was Queen Victoria
Queen Victoria,
at the time.
we were ruled by England then, and we had to rely on their kindness, you know, for things. And so they decided to build Dublin, or give Ireland a shopping centre, and this is what they gave us. So it was the first shopping centre in Ireland, and it's great.
But there's a little story about the opening of it.
So the English architects were used, English builders, and then on the final kind of insult to the Dubliners was that on the opening night all the English dignitaries were asked.
So none of the
Irish
locals
were left out.
Okay.
And but they, you know what the Irish are like, they didn't take it sitting down, and they burnt it to the ground. It got burnt to the ground, well, mysteriously. But sadly, none of the traders who were Irish had insurance.
Okay.
So the Dubliners had made their statement, but they didn't want to hurt their own traders. And the kindness, no insurance existed, so they all gathered together and helped all the traders get back up and running. The shopping centre was rebuilt using Irish labour, and it was opened on 1892.
Okay.
And it has traded continuously every single day since then. The longest continuously trading centre in Europe and in Ireland. Until March 2020, when we had to close the gates.
Yes, okay, and we'll get into that in a few moments' time. And talking about some of the traders, one man here who has a coffee shop, and he's a busy man. Simon, good morning to you.
Good morning, Deric. Nice.
Simon, how long are you here?
Well, 25 years this coming Christmas. We'll be here in George's Street Arcade, serving up sandwiches, coffee, salads, soups to the good people of Dublin.
And it was a difficult time during COVID for you as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the last couple of years have been difficult for everyone. I mean, for everyone in the world, I guess. Certainly, it's lovely to see Dublin City back alive again and people around. It was a very strange 2 years with nobody out there at all. Of course, I have to say the landlords were fantastic here and very supportive of us and kept us going through the lockdowns. And, you know, there were supports there from the government and all. So we're still here.
We're still up and running and you're still working. How many people are you employing?
Well, we've 6 people working. 6 people and me all working very hard here.
And lots of people coming in and out already.
Lots of people coming out, yeah, absolutely. And people coming in and out all day. And
great. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us here this morning, Simon. And of course, Gwen, we'll walk and talk and speaking to Simon there about the supports that you put in place. What I loved what you did at the time during that COVID period is that you didn't charge any rent.
Yeah. So yes, well, it was necessary, and you know, we value the people, and there wouldn't have been any other way, you know, really, because the government were giving them supports, but that was feeding their families and paying their rents. So yeah, we gave them a complete rent break for all of the lockdown time. So of course it went on a lot longer than anyone anticipated. But do you know what? We all got through it. It galvanised everybody, and you know, there's the success of businesses is more important than the money that's been made from them. So,
and I love your ethos as well. You won an award for that, wasn't it? For basically your kind-heartedness to people.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, we've had a few awards. Yeah, well, kind of the one that I liked the most was a model of unity and diversity.
Yes.
Because when we bought this over 30 years ago, my father is a very, very benevolent man. I mean, his name is Layden, and anyone knows the benevolence is rooted in my father, you know. And but it was all Irish. In fact, there was nobody here really. There was hardly
and now
any.
you have 40 traders here.
40 businesses, and you know they're from every continent: Libya, Palestine, France, Italy, Germany, Malaysia, Tokyo. You name it.
Now, she didn't manage to make it in this morning, but we do have a Ukrainian lady here as well. She set up her own nail bar.
We open, everyone runs their own shops here, so they don't open up very early, very tight. And I don't insist on it because, you know something, people need quality of life. And city is quiet in the morning, people aren't shopping. So, you know, our traders come in, as you know, a little bit later. But I would say now, it's like a happy United Nations here, really.
That's
and,
good.
you know, people say, why can't we all live together? If people are having getting a good break and a fair crack at the whip, they can be happily together. Every nationality, colour, creed. So it's wonderful.
A happy family. Well, speaking of happy families, one man here who's cracking the whip nice and early. Good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
How long are you up and running?
We're now based in the arcade for the last 23 years.
Okay, and how's business been for you?
Now, it's been good. It's picking up after, of course, COVID, but it's a busy arcade, great tourism, wedding business would be parts of my business as we make everything here.
Yeah, we got up to your workshop earlier on as well. We got some shots in and around. Beautiful. And everything made from...
Everything is made here. I've just finished now. This is the friendship ring. So it's gold, yellow gold, white gold. It just clips in there together like so. But everything is handmade here. Myself and my wife, she's a gemologist, so she deals with all the stones, deals with the clients.
So it's a real family business, real family affair.
Business. People come, have something made, get your old gold melted, have something made new out of your gold, commissions, and then we have our tourism, of course. Great place.
A busy time, and that's what you were saying there. Gwen, a lot of people still passing through here every day. Loads of people coming from Georgia Street right through as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know, people from all over the world, really, to be honest with you. And I suppose there's something unique about it, you know. They're all independent businesses. They're all family businesses, you know, every single one of them. And so there's just a great feeling. I ask people to do what they love.
Yeah.
So effectively here you've got 40 people doing what they love most. So we all want to work at our hobby. We all want to work, and so this that is what I try to encourage. And in fact, here's Lou.
Oh,
here's Lou. Lou's one of our newest people.
One of your
Ukrainian nail bars.
Oh, you're late.
But Lou is actually these are designer. Bags,
these are designer
clothes.
as well.
So, you know,
vintage designer bags and clothes and basically anything fashionable, I suppose, isn't it?
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us here this morning.
Pleasure.
We really enjoyed our little tour around. No, absolutely. Look, it's nice to be it's early in the morning.
By 12 in the day now, it's
this place to be hopping.
Yeah.
All right, there we have it. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you so much.
That's Deric. Look at that.
It's so funny. I have gone through there so many times, like as Deric said, passing through. But now I will actually stop.
That sandwich shop, the sandwich shop.
Oh my God,
Defo.
Simon's place is delicious.
Yeah, but I never really stopped, you know, because I'm always trying to get through to go somewhere.
I get presents in there all the time. Yeah,
Listen,
very handy
small
for
independent stores
Also,
helping
can
out.
we have a boss
exactly, doing your
can we
thing.
have a boss like Gwen? Whenever you turn up, it's absolutely fine.
Great, listen, fair play. I love those arcades, really do.
Absolutely beautiful and lovely. What the Laydens do as a family is wonderful. If more people had that sort of philanthropic spirit, it would be amazing. Now, coming up on Ireland AM, we're going to be speaking to a male breast cancer survivor right here on the couch.
OK, we'll see you shortly.
Hello, welcome. Sorry, I was singing Jenny from the Block. Lots more coming up this hour to keep you entertained.
Now, did you know it doesn't just affect women? We're going to be speaking to a male breast cancer survivor about the signs and symptoms that you should look out for. It's coming up next.
Because it is something that does happen and people should be absolutely aware of it.
1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
Breast cancer. People who get breast cancer are male. Yeah.
So it's something that we're going to be talking about in just a while. Now, he is a TV and film prop making mastermind. Tipperary man Ciaran Cook is going to be telling us what it's like to work on massive films like The Hobbit.
That's insane. Do you know what? Well, I want to ask him, like, what happens if you make one of those and it doesn't get used?
I know, and it breaks.
Now, Alan, what else is coming up on the catwalk?
Yeah, but you like Mandy's fluffy sleeves,
The fluffy
don't you?
sleeves, yeah.
I like the fluffy sleeves.
Is it Mandy from the block?
It's Mandy. Look at those combats. It's so Jenny from the block. Thank you.
Well, forget about jeans and leggings because it's hello skirts and dresses, yeah?
It sure is. It's all about skirts and dresses for the season because like that, we're just tipping into the iceberg at this stage of what's coming in stores with all of the boutiques. So I decided, let's go skirts, let's go dresses this morning, and this is just a sneak peek of what's going to come up later on.
And any more fluffy sleeves?
No more fluffy sleeves.
Okay.
We learned a new word today in the fashion world. So happy days.
That's Tommy's fluffy sleeves.
The phone cover as well, the phone
Yes,
and the
isn't that
chain
cool?
and all.
Yeah.
That's what I need
all
so I don't
happened
lose
this
it.
morning.
Fluffy sleeves, everybody, fluffy sleeves. Now, Deric has been in Dublin's Fair City all morning at the iconic Georgia Street Arcade. How are you getting on, Deric?
Absolutely, we're having a lovely morning. The sun is shining, things are looking good. This is Leifaf here behind me, all the way from Mali, and he's got his stall here set up as well. So they're beginning, bit by bit, they're beginning to wake up here in Georgia Street Arcade. Back to you guys in the studio.
One man who'll wake them up. It's our
Deric, absolutely. Hello, welcome back. We were talking about
Discussing, yeah.
student accommodation earlier on and the fact that there is so much fraud going on. A message here that says what you're describing regarding student accommodation is what happens with legitimate accommodation that is associated, that's owned by the university or ones that are on campus. Paying deposits for rooms that you have not seen, so none of us have seen the rooms beforehand. Because if you don't pay the deposit, you won't get it. During COVID, no accommodation, no deposits back. Is that not fraud also? I didn't get my deposit back from Carr Village.
Listen, I would say a lot
I
of
think
people...
we'd left a tea stain or something. No one got their
A lot of people out there going into any accommodation, there's such a scramble to get accommodation now.
Yeah.
I'd say people are more than happy to just, if they hear a room coming up, they're like, I'll take it. I don't even need to see it.
Yeah, but if you're on-campus accommodation,
I
at
know
least
that's
then it's through the
on
student
campus,
union, and
but
at least you know you have it.
as well.
At least you know you sort of know the standard of the rooms and the accommodation on
listen,
campus.
they're
I know, but you sort of know what you're getting. That's the thing. And we were also talking about, we were getting texting earlier on with people like two lads returning back to live with their parents at 26 and 24. And we got one text here. I love my children, but I certainly would not be happy having them back living with me. I've made it clear for a long time, if problems arise, I would be willing to divide my house, but I need my own space. I certainly will not be back washing and cooking full time. I'd never mind helping out, but I believe we're entitled to a peaceful time after all the hard years. See the one from...
That's not true. Did you write... Did one of you write this?
Who is it, Tommy?
What is it? Mary from Limerick.
Yeah, Mary in Limerick.
Yeah, my daughter sometimes comes back to see me at the weekends. She's a right pain in the arse, spending her time chasing the cat around the living room, watching quiz shows and drinking all my wine. Mary, I don't know
who you're
on
talking about there, Mary.
That she would never say the A word, right pain in the A word. She would never. One of you wrote that. Just put words into my mother's mouth.
That came in.
Teresa
later, Mary?
said, good morning, Oral. I am afraid I am a true Irish mammy. My sons are 23 and 20, and I don't want them to move out. I miss them when they're on holidays. I'm dreading the day that they move out. I actually think that they're just going to move out whenever I'm at work, or else I'll be just lying in front of the car begging them not to go. Yeah, there you go. That's it, exactly. It was very quiet in the house without them.
Temporary mammy.
Do you have any? I'm just wondering.
Sons to leave.
I'm just feeling really bad in case she's got a daughter as well, and she's like, "Oh no, I don't mind about her. It's fine."
Mummy's boy. Yeah, mummy's boys.
Mary O'Connell, I'll talk to you later on. Now, after the break, breast cancer is the most common type of cancer in women in Ireland, but today we're actually going to be shining a light on how it affects men because male breast cancer is a thing. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk to you shortly.
Now, in February 2021, our next guest started his day like any other before discovering a cancerous lump in his breast while having a shower.
Here to tell us his story is breast cancer survivor Dara McDonough. Dara, thank you so much for joining us. And it's a pleasure to have you here because it's not something that we hear or talk about often, and that is male breast cancer, which is what you had. So can you tell us about discovering the lump?
Right, discovering the lump, I was in the shower and washed myself, as you do, and I brought my hand over my right nipple up to go under my arm, and I found a lump. Now, it was a substantial lump. It was about 2.5 centimetres.
Okay.
It wasn't protruding, it was in deep, and I knew straight away that shouldn't be there. But if I had been a woman, straight away I would have thought of breast cancer. The furthest thing from my mind was breast cancer.
Yeah.
So I dried myself off and got dressed and forgot all about it because there was no pain, absolutely none. Now, you two guys would be happy to know I shower every morning. So the next morning, I felt it again. So I left it for about 5-6 days, I said. And I just knew it shouldn't be there, that there was something up. So I made an appointment to see my doctor. I went down to see my doctor, Dr. Oliver Lynn in Drogheda. And he had a look, well, he had a feel of it.
Yeah.
And he said, Dara, it's probably just a cyst. He said, but now I was very lucky with Oliver Lynn. He said, I have a scanner down in the back office. Technicians come in on a Thursday. I think this is a Monday or Tuesday. Technicians come in on a Thursday, come back up on Thursday, we'll do a scan, send it down to Dublin, which I duly did, scanned it, sent it down to Dublin. And a couple of weeks later, I got word to attend Professor Maurice Stokes' clinic in Dublin, in Eccles Street. So I went up and he told me that he saw the scan and he'd like to further investigate. So when I was sitting there, breast cancer was not on my mind whatsoever.
No.
Because men don't get breast. That's a woman's disease.
Yeah.
So the next week he sent me over. I was over in the Mater and I went up for a mammogram, which was an experience in itself, I can tell you.
We were just talking about this.
How does that work?
It's how it works. It is like a George Foreman sandwich maker. That's all I can say. It's you put your breast in it and they squeeze it down.
For a guy, is that even like...
That was very difficult.
Right, okay.
Not having a breast.
Like it is. And first of all, you always feel like they're going to break your rib cage because they're moving you in such a way.
Yes,
but for you to try to...
They had me leaning over a table and then they
clamped.
They squeezed the...
Yeah.
They just, in the corner of it, they squeezed it down.
So you're going through all this. Are you thinking this is bonkers? Like, do I really need to be going for a mammogram here? I mean, breast cancer, male breast cancer, is that even a thing?
Breast cancer was still not on my mind.
Even with the mammogram?
Even with... I knew a mammogram was women and breast cancer, maybe. See, breast cancer was not in my family. My mother, sisters, aunts never came across it, ever before. So even with the mammogram, okay, I thought it was strange, but I still did not think of breast cancer.
Right.
And then I was brought downstairs for a biopsy.
Okay.
Which anybody out there who had a biopsy, that was the sorest thing I went through in the whole process.
Right.
That was pretty sore.
Yeah.
So about a week later, 2 weeks later, I was back in Professor Maurice Stokes' clinic. He was getting the results of the biopsy. And I walked in and he said, Dara, sit down. So I sat down. And there was a lady standing to my right who I now know was a breast care nurse.
Yeah.
In civvies, though, not in a nurse uniform. And she put her hand on my right shoulder. And when that happened, I thought, right, this is not good. And then Professor Stokes turned around and just said, Dara, got the results of the biopsy, you have breast cancer.
Right.
So...
Wow. So stage 2.
Stage 2.
But, like, as you say, that never even entered your mind.
Absolutely. It was a woman's disease. Like, it's...
So what was the reaction? What did he kind of... What the next steps for you?
Yeah, it's my head. You see, all I really heard was cancer.
Absolutely.
You know, you hear cancer, you go, oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And the breast part,
okay, I
didn't hear it really.
Yeah.
Cancer. And then he said to me, I asked him, I said, what's going to happen? And he said, it's exact words where it has to come off. I said, what? He said, your breast and your nipple. I have to take them off.
So you had to have a mastectomy?
I had a mastectomy, yeah. Now, when he told me my breast...
Wow, look at that scar.
I haven't got a breast.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So look, I was completely blown away.
Yeah.
My head was in a spin. So I got myself together and I said, right, Prof, when is this going to happen? Now, his exact words were to me were, what are you doing next Thursday?
Wow.
And I said, I guess I'm meeting you somewhere. And he said, yes, 7 o'clock, Mater Hospital.
So from your first day of going into the doctor to having your mastectomy, it was about 5 weeks?
About 5 weeks.
5 weeks. So this all happened very quickly. So psychologically,
very
you're
quickly.
trying to catch up.
Oh, yeah. Look, Dr. Oliver Lynn in Drogheda, he expedited the whole, and this is a GP, but I was just so lucky that the Drogheda Medical Clinic had this scanner.
Yeah.
You know, I was so lucky, and the whole thing was expedited between him, and then when I went up to the breast clinic, they expedited the whole thing as well. And
What was the reaction of your friends and stuff when you told them you had breast cancer?
Double take, as in,
yeah.
How have you breast cancer?
I know, yeah.
My family was breast cancer. How?
But it is something that happens to men around the world, and people like you are letting us know about it. So
absolutely.
How are you doing?
I'm in remission, but the most important thing to me now is I'm an ambassador for Breast Cancer Ireland.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to be an ambassador for Breast Cancer Ireland, and proud to be able to promote awareness of breast cancer, especially for men.
Yeah.
And this is it, because the Great Pink Run, which we know, of course, was massive for breast cancer, raising huge awareness, but it's actually hybrid this year.
It is. It's now the Great Pink Run is Breast Cancer Ireland's biggest fundraiser of the year.
Yeah.
With hope we're practically out of COVID, so it is an actual run.
Yeah.
There's a run in Sandyford on the 9th of October, and in Kilkenny on the 16th of October.
Yeah.
And there's also, you can actually do it virtually still.
Yeah.
You can do it in your own community, your own park, whatever, between the 9th and the 16th. Or you can do it physically. There's a 5K and a 10K in Sandyford, and a 5K and a 10K in Kilkenny. Now, because I'm so passionate about it now and realise what a lucky escape I had, I'm actually going to do both runs.
Good on you.
Fair play. So one on the 9th, one on the 16th.
It's so important for everybody to get involved in this Great Pink.
No, that's brilliant.
We tell women all the time to make sure that they're checking themselves every time that they're in the shower.
Yeah.
You saw this, you felt this in the shower. Men have to check this in the shower. I know it's 1 in 1,000, but you could save someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's look, men get it as well. I know that now. When I found a lump in the shower, if I was a woman, straight away I would have thought of breast cancer.
Well,
but
listen,
because I was a man, I didn't.
And listen, and you knew something was wrong, and you found the lump, and it's brilliant. 1 in 1,000 men develop breast cancer, which is amazing. Something I never knew about as well. Listen, Dara McDonough, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us as well. And people who want to get involved, it's breastcancerireland.com as well. Thank you.
And it's the Great Pink Run. You can register on that, greatpinkrun.ie.
Dara, you're looking great, and thank you so much for coming in. Great to hear you've got such good news. Thank you so much, Dara.
Lots more Ireland AM coming up after this break.
We're getting the legs out today in Fashion, Al.
Wouldn't be like you, Mary.
I know, I'm such a shrinking violet about my legs. It's the only part of me I like. It's fine.
It really is.
Yeah.
Mandy Maher is styling the must-have skirts and dresses. Good morning.
Good morning, and I covered mine.
I'm wearing any chance you can get the legs are out.
I mean, come on. When you like one part of yourself, why not?
When you have got
Go
great
with
legs,
it. Go with
actually,
it.
that is actually a key point. When you have great legs, show them, and don't be afraid to show them off, is what I'd say.
Boom. Mary Lee
So
is our
starting with
first
Mary
look
Lee,
this
I've got
morning.
some fabulous looks this morning. I'm really excited to show these because they're all just brand new coming in stores, because all the shops are just starting to get the new stuff. stock, and of course it is exciting. So today we're showing from Pia Boutique, which is in Longford, and this is actually a dress. So it's a coat dress, but we're actually wearing it as a jacket today. But we just decided to show it to give you an idea of what it looks like. So you actually wear that as a dress? You can wear it as a dress if you wish, yeah. And I love it because of the tiger print. And we've seen lots of print going on, but tiger print is going to be one coming through for autumn winter, which I like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it works quite well. And of course, has the different of the mustards with the black. And of course, you see a faint little bit of pink as well there.
That pink really kind of makes it pop, doesn't it? It's absolutely fantastic.
And actually, pink accessories could be fabulous with this too if you want to be a little bit bold.
I really like this chain. What's going on with Mary Lee's chain?
The chain itself is of a black and gold mixture of a beading and chain, and it's very different. It's a little kind of a disc drop on it, and I like it because it's kind of it's two-tone. It looks what it really is, and it works quite well, and it sits perfectly on the neck too. It's not too long or not too short, so it works very well.
So you have a matching top with this.
And then we went all out. We kept the whole thing matching, and I'm loving. Isn't this just gorgeous? I really think this is fabulous. It's that puff sleeve detail, of course, a little bit tighter at the end from the elbow down to the wrist, but it's very, very classy, and I think this is going to be coming back to Galway with me today. I'm loving this. Just letting everyone know already. I'm loving it. Love the neckline as well. Isn't the neckline quite flattering on that too? Yeah. We teamed up then, of course, with this gorgeous pleather skirt. Big fan of the pleather skirts. I feel there's something like a wardrobe staple. There's something that never go out of fashion.
Absolutely. And whether it's mini, mid or long, they're always great.
Absolutely, and it's just great and it works really, really well. I love this look. Really, really very classy and fashionable.
Gorgeous. Sarah is here today.
So we're staying with Pia Boutique in Longford, and this time we decided to go with the dress. And first of all, start with this lovely, beautiful chain. Very much a statement chain, if you can see there.
Very much is.
Got to be honest, you're taking the bull by the horns with that one, aren't you?
You certainly are.
I love the pun on that one, That's a good one.
I know.
But it does work well, and it's different.
We're just looking at the dress here at the moment.
The dress itself, as we can see, is that herringbone style dress in the browns and the creams. It's very, very elegant, very classy. Now, if you note here on the neckline, it actually does. We've it held back like just off the shoulder, but you can actually button that right the way through and wear it more as a cowl neck if you want to.
Yeah, it becomes a cowl polo neck
correct.
thing.
Yeah. No, we kept it open. I just preferred it
the belt
open.
with the dress, or did you add that?
No, I added the belt, Alan.
Doing a bit of styling.
The styling came into it. I just felt it needed something, and that's the reason I added the belt on it. To be honest with you, I think the belt actually finishes the look. I think it just gives that little bit of extra chicness. Now, this dress is buttoned the whole way down, so you can wear it as a coat. So we're really getting value out of it and being able to pop on, like we put a little camisole underneath this morning, but you could easily wear this with a beautiful pair of beige trousers and wear it as a coat, and off you go.
The herringbone design is absolutely
gorgeous isn't it?
It's
beautiful print.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That is lovely. That's a beautiful little dress now, I have to say.
Niamh, then we're heading to Ivory Boutique, which is in the Oran Town Centre in Galway, and it's also in the Castle Troy Town Centre in Limerick as well. And I love this. It's a gorgeous coat. We know it's going to be coat season, and it's a great little investment piece. It is a mix of the teddy bear faux fur along with the leather as well, and as you can see the puff detail at the back then too. So
it's got all of them.
It has everything, hasn't it? And it's great. And like if you're somebody like myself that's always on the run or out and about a lot or at matches a lot and getting really wet, I think this is a great look. And it looks smart at the same time and yet warm. And what I love about it, it's light, which I think is something people like to know as well. It's not a heavy coat.
Okay, and we're going to go on. You're very matchy today. It's great. So this is a lovely little Peter Pan collar.
Isn't it gorgeous? It's beautiful. I love this. It's a very, very feminine, very girly cardigan. And again, like that, it's just very fine crochet style knit. Now, I put a little vest top underneath it because it is quite see-through. So I did need the vest top underneath it. But obviously, it's an option for anybody if they prefer to go without.
The little phone holder is very cool as well.
This is the latest trend. Isn't it fantastic?
Yeah. The pearl.
I love it.
Phone holder.
And they come in different chains, so and obviously they also have it to match various phones, so it's not just for iPhones, it's for any form of phones it will work with.
So how does it work? Are those little things in your phone?
It's a case.
Oh, it's a case.
And then it's a special case, and there's various cases to match different phones depending on the phone you have, and you clip the little case on then to the chain itself. But isn't it fabulous? And it's all the go. This is going to be the latest
Definitely
so your phone be
market trend.
hanging out of you as
Hanging
an
out of you. There
accessory.
you go, and looking really cool at the same
Right.
time. Don't you love it?
I know, but not as an accessory.
I like that. I really like
and
that.
so do I like
the
it
skirt.
too. And then we finished up then with this pleather style skirt. It has a little slit detail, as you see in the front, not too much. Pocket detail, and again, I like that because again, you can wear many different tops and colours with the skirt like this, whether it's white, creams, whatever. But I like that outfit. It's quite smart.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And Mary Lee is back with us.
And we're staying at Ivory Lane in Oranmore and in Limerick. And of course, this for me ticks the boxes too. I love it. It's very, very fashionable. The jacket, I don't think any woman should be without a jacket like a leather jacket. It is a must for me anyway.
And do you know what? It can be hard to find them with the gold. A lot of the time it's silver. I'm always looking for gold for the gold.
It's fabulous. And
hardware.
the quality
it's
of
lovely.
it, it's incredible. I just love this jacket. It's fantastic. It's not too bulky. Obviously, you can zip it up and close it up if you wanted to. For me, we obviously left it open this morning. I prefer it open.
Yeah. But leather jackets are always can be layering as well over your big coat, then your leather jacket, then your top. Yeah.
And it's all year round as well. So that's what's great about leather jackets. You'll have it forever. And they don't date, actually. Leather jackets are always...
Just a little vest top underneath.
Underneath
there,
it, Alan, yeah, and just kept it very, very simple. But the skirt itself, I'm loving the pleat skirt. I adore the shades of colours in this as well. You've got the pinks, the blacks, the browns. You've everything going on, a little bit of blue. Very, very elegant.
Very
love the
eye-catching.
length on it. It's just, I just think this just ticks the boxes. As I said, I love the clothes this morning. I'm probably over talking about them, but I love them.
And
it's just lovely to see all the new pieces coming through. Finished up with this gorgeous bag there with a lovely chain detail. But yes, that's the looks this morning.
Gorgeous, Mary Lee, you're fabulous.
Thank
They're
you.
very Mandy Mar.
So,
I
yeah.
can see you wearing every single
That's
one of them.
the problem.
Actually.
I'm bringing them all home to go on. It's deadly and brutal. I don't drink and smoke, but he keeps telling me if I did, I'd be cheaper to keep it. Sure, anyway. Sure, could have worse things.
I don't drink and smoke, so I'm buying this.
I'm buying everything.
Exactly, you have.
Mandy, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for that.
both.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Tommy, what's on the way?
Ah! No.
Oh
I'm loving this. He's worked at everything from The Hobbit to Alice in Wonderland. We're going to talk to model maker and prosthetic maker Ciaran Cook. He's going to join us after the break. Wait till I give you... Oh, better not do. Odyssey Studios, I'd never heard of it, but it's located in Limerick, supplies blockbuster films and TV productions with miniature models, weapons, armour, props, prosthetics, you name it.
They have it all here in front of us. And some huge projects as well. And studio manager at Odyssey Studios, Ciaran Cook, joins us now to chat about his work. Good morning to you, Ciaran.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, it's fascinating work. How did you get into it? And tell us about Odyssey Studios and why Limerick?
Limerick's just it's a budding economy. You know, it's really growing. Tri-Studios opened, has all the infrastructure, the airports, the motorways. We're a stone's throw from Dublin, and it looked like kind of a bit of a fresh start for us to get into it. You know, Dublin, everyone's working in Dublin. We're looking to spread out and kind of bring the West Coast into it.
So we're seeing this miniature model here, and this is a big thing, what you do for the likes of these big, big movies. I mean, how long would something like this take to make?
How long is a piece of string? You know, they might say they want it tomorrow, they might want it in 2 weeks, but usually we might have a couple of weeks to make a model like this. This guy in particular was just made by Paul Roster, one of our lead model makers who made it, just as a display for some of the courses that we're running. We do courses in making the prosthetics, the models, the props, and this be kind of for one of our intermediate or advanced level
And
courses.
would something like that be used in a movie? Did they use kind of miniature models for actual movies and TV shows?
Absolutely. You might remember Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all of those would be famous for using models. So they might use it in the art department just to have a visual of what it will look like, or they may put it on camera and work with the visual effects.
Because before CGI now, they would blow up models like this, wouldn't they? Like the water come down and crash in on something like this instead of a massive big building being crashed in.
That's it. It's much cheaper to make small ones.
Yeah. Does everybody use the Zoolander line to you, like, what is this, a centre for ants?
All the time. All the time.
And talk to us about the prosthetics and stuff, because like we were mentioning like The Hobbit and bits and pieces like that. I mean, like the level of detail that goes into these, like the hair, everything else, is unbelievable.
It's good, yeah. So Bobby Midlane, the fantastically talented Bobby Midlane's our head of prosthetics. He would have made these guys for bits like the Tudors, Vikings, and then we teach it as well. But whether they're individuals or whether it's an appliance or whatever. Yeah,
and is it your cousin? Is it your cousin Mark? Wasn't he involved in The Hobbit? Because I actually got to go over. We were playing in New Zealand at the time, and we got to go behind the scenes.
Oh, did you?
Amazing. And to see them, and each individual hair It was unbelievable, just put in. Like the level of detail, the level of budget these movies have to do this stuff is just incredible as well.
It's mega money, but you know, it's whatever it takes to get the shot that's needed.
And how did you get into it then?
I definitely didn't take the normal route. I wanted to. Originally, I had an interest in art, but I went to college, studied economics, worked in sales and marketing, and I suppose I don't know how many failed salesmen became artists, but, you know, again, it worked out for me. But myself and Mark started working together a couple of years ago and had a good working relationship with me working on set and him making some of the stuff.
Okay.
And I've transitioned to making the stuff now, and we made the move to Limerick.
So you are on the sets of these big movies because you do make the big set pieces. Like these are the props, but you do actually make huge set pieces. What's probably some of the biggest pieces you've made?
So, I mean, in terms of set pieces for the likes of Foundation, after the show that was shot in Troy Studios, we made very large wall reliefs, which were in the back of some of the sets. We also work with public sculptures then as well. So if people are doing public installations, we can blow up their artwork to 2-3 meters, however big, for some of the things you see inside the motorway and those.
Oh, right, those things, yeah.
And how would you have an idea of what the director wants? Because they probably have an idea in their mind. Do they sketch it out? Do you have to do sketches? Like, how on board with that, or in collaboration do you work?
I guess that's probably one of the biggest challenges in the film industry is getting it out of the creative mind and onto set. And there's teams of people paid mega bucks to make that happen. So
okay, and they'll send you the designs, the drawings.
Absolutely, it's kind of like an iterative process where we'll start with maybe, I suppose, with CGI we can do it all digitally, and we can change those designs bit by bit until we nail the head, and then you get.
And movie making can be very much things change last minute and stuff like that. Have you ever made massive pieces and it just was not used?
Yeah, imagine.
Like you spend
time and time again.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
you spend
absolutely.
hours or months on it, and then they decide, oh, that scene's not going to work, or it's not being used.
Some of the biggest work we've done has sometimes it will get cut. Sometimes for one reason or another it may not work. Obviously, you love to see your work on TV, but sometimes it won't make the cut. That's the nature of the beast.
The nature of the beast.
What about 3D printing? Is that kind of taking things to a new level?
A whole new level, yeah, absolutely. I mean, whereas before somebody had to make everything by hand, now we have 3D scanners that can make a digital model. The 3D printers can print it out, and we also have a large CNC robot which can go even bigger again.
This is what you do in the studios.
So it's kind of designed on computers, a lot of it, and then you have like a machine, this robot that just kind of creates each different layer of it.
Absolutely. For the large set pieces, we'd mill out large blocks of foam, we'd mill out these large sculptures, and what you're seeing in some of those shots were the spaceships we made, which would have been 3D printed.
And is there a project that you would love to work on?
I mean, we've done plenty of
You've ticked all the boxes already.
We've done lots of sci-fi. I'd love to get back into maybe some more fantasy and bits and pieces now.
Like what?
I think I grew up as a huge Lord of the Rings fan, grew up doing all that kind of stuff. So I'd love something a little bit more down those lines.
Cool. And so when you look at these things here, but they're amazing, but this is just a small part of it. Can you look at the hand? They're so real life. Look at that. It's really a bit freaky, isn't it?
It is a little bit.
Look at that, because they actually move. It's the way it's done. Whoa.
And what sort of projects are you working on at the minute? Anything exciting?
Yeah, we've got plenty on. So, I mean, we just finished up working on Halo in Budapest, and another big sci-fi. And we've kind of...
what would you be doing for Halo?
So the likes of the helmet over there, we made those for season 1.
Hello.
It's freaky, Maureen, isn't it? Would you like to shake hands, Maureen?
I just think that the hair on this, as hairy as my hand, the hair is so fantastic.
It's so...
But the thing is, props make... So I'm watching, kind of the new House of the Dragon, and I think you can tell that they don't have the models like they used with Game of Thrones, that a lot more is CGI.
You're a hardcore
it doesn't
fan.
look as good. Because
do you think the models are better?
The models make it so much better, right?
Yeah.
That really was the golden age of movie making, in my opinion, anyway. Was maybe when they had the models and a small amount of CGI on top of them just to blend it might have been the best, but you can't beat the practical ways.
You can't.
I just kind of think that... How long would that take, did you say?
I said about 2 weeks.
I'd say we probably gave Paul about 2 weeks.
I mean, I think about doing a Lego thing. It takes me about a year. And look at that. It's unbelievable.
Here, go and fry a bit of steak.
It's a bit rubbery, watch out.
It's just fascinating what you do.
It really is.
Ciaran Cook, thank you so much from Odyssey Studios.
Absolutely.
Great to have you with us. And now, coming up on tomorrow's show, Move Over Mary Poppins, there's a Manny in time. We're going to be chatting about the trend of male nannies.
Oh, right.
Absolutely. We've got one Irish nanny who's working in London. Also, Ireland's favourite chanteuse, Camilla Sullivan, will be on the show to chat about her new tour and playing this year's Electric Picnic. She was there in all the rain.
That and lots more. We'll see you tomorrow from 7.
Have a good day.